felt good.
What's the most wholesome experience you've had with a stranger?
The most wholesome and memorable experience was in a crowded New York airport with an elderly lady. I saw her crying and looking bewildered as she sat alone in the main concourse. So I sat down next to her and asked if I could help. She said she was going to a family member's funeral on the West Coast and had never been in an airport. The lady was hard of hearing, and the loudspeaker announcements just compounded her confusion, to the point where she was physically trembling. At that point, as I once noted here in AskReddit, I guided her through security and directly to her gate, asking the attendants to give her special assistance, especially with her inability to discern broadcast announcements. As an attendant escorted her for boarding, the lady turned, waved, and blew a kiss in my direction. To this day, I can still picture her vividly.
So the day before my last GCSE 2019 student, I was rushing around trying to buy gifts for my teachers. I was close with them all. Here in the good OL north of the UK it tends to rain when it's least wanted, and I ended up getting drenched in my school uniform carrying a fat load of presents. Then a really nice lad handed me an umbrella and said, "Here, take it, you need it more than me." I'll forever remember that guy and I hope he sees this.
I was in Walmart one day and some dude was blocking the aisle where the item I needed was located. I then heard him ask a Walmart employee where the cabinet liners were. She proceeded to say she wasn't sure and started to send him to the wrong location. I noisily piped up, "I know where they are. If you want to follow me, I will take you to them because I just bought some last week." The man, "Oh, okay. Thank you." He followed me to the opposite side of the store and I showed him where they were. He thanked me again and I hurried back to the other side of the store to get what I needed. 5 minutes later at the self-checkouts the man showed up and I saw him just hanging around with his bag of purchases on his arm. When it came time to pay he stepped up and insisted on paying for my items. I thanked him profusely. At the time I only had $35 in my bank account and was trying to purchase food for the week. This man who I was so annoyed with helped me so much. I still tear up when I think of his kindness. I am a single mother of 2 wonderful kids and this was my miracle.
I had been living and struggling in NYC for 3 years when my dad was diagnosed with Parkinson's. I decided to move back down south to be closer and help out. It was a huge, scary, life-changing decision, and I didn't know if I was making the right call. I had been working in book publishing and trying to follow my dreams, but it just wasn't what I thought it would be. On one of my last nights in town, I got into a cab to meet someone for dinner. The eerily prophetic cab driver just looked at me in the mirror and asked, "You are leaving this city for good?" I told him I was and he said, "Yes, you have met many fancy animals with human faces." As I got out of the car and said goodbye, he said, "Well, we have met 1,000 years ago or so, and I expect we will again." I think about that guy a lot. And yes, moving was the right decision.
Once I worked at a bookstore. Saw a big heavy-set dude in overalls come in and I assumed he'd beeline right to the gun magazine section of our store, rural area, so you kind of got a feel of where people would go once they walked in, so I didn't initially pay him much attention. I turn around from checking a person out at the main register area and he's standing there waiting his turn patiently. So I asked him what he was in need of, and he mentioned he had a book on order held back for him. He said it was the book 8,000 Splendid Suns by Khaled Hosseini. Kind of caught me by surprise that a man that looked like a country bumpkin was picking this particular book up, and in my head I assumed it was for his wife. Found the book and started ringing him up and started chatting with him, and realized the book was in fact for him. I'll never forget what he said because even though it was such a small moment in life it changed me a little bit. He said, "I think it's important to read books like this about other cultures than ours. The news always makes the Afghan people seem so bad, but his, Khaled Hosseini, first book Kite Runner gives a good glimpse of what life was like over there and made me think twice about how I was judging those people. Talk about making me feel like an asshole, here I was judging him for how he looked and he goes and pulls this on me." I purchased Kite Runner that day and read it and it set into motion a lot of thoughts I had about how I judge and look at others. To this day I try my best to see the position others might be in before I judge them unfairly. And I often fail at not judging people based on how they look, but I now try to remind myself when I do how unfair it is. It was only a 2-minute interaction with this man that I had never seen before and will never see again, but damn if it hasn't likely made me a better person as a result.
More than 20 years ago, when I was still a teenager, I was on vacation with my parents. There were a lot of problems and fights I couldn't handle, and it came to the point that I had a suicide attempt. I snuck out of the hotel room, crying rivers, and tried to jump off a railing in the courtyard of the hotel. A cleaning lady must have seen me. At the moment I was on the other side of the railing, the lady pulled me back to her side, took me in her arms very firmly and lovingly stroked my head while crying and told me that everything would be okay. Every pain passes. I could never say thanks, but this lady changed my life and I never had such terrible intentions again. She gave me something no one else could do at this moment. Thank you, stranger woman.
I was traveling to the national parks in Utah. In the hotel parking lot I noticed I had a flat. I was very flustered because I was worried about the cost of replacing the tire on top of the rental company charging me extra. As I was struggling with the tire, a group of Hispanic men came over to help me out to replace it. They offered me a Corona beer, and we all shared a beer, and they took me through the process, guiding me but still having me do most of the work on my own as a learning experience. They refused a tip at the end. I'll also add that this was a formative moment for someone growing up in the wealthy white South. Growing up, my only interactions or memories with people that were Hispanic were moments like my parents not letting us play outside when the neighbors had a Mexican lawn crew out, my parents' complaints when the Spanish-speaking waiter messed up our order, etc. Even though I wasn't racist, that moment made me stop and think of my parents and people I grew up with in a different light. It made me go from all races are fine to wow, my parents and the people I grew up with are a major problem.
A few years ago, I was experiencing deep depression. My life was a mess, my apartment was a mess, I was a mess. For a moment, I decided to just go to the park and sit for a while, as I was really at the end of my rope and had zero idea on what to do. Out of nowhere, a kid, possibly about 3 or 4 years, comes and hands me 3 yellow dandelions and runs back to her mom. I don't know why, but I always remember that. That day, I went home and cleaned my apartment and made it tidy. I wouldn't say that my life miraculously changed, but I will say that that one moment of kindness, that neither the kid nor the mom probably remember, was one of the most memorable moments in my life.
I was a teenager hanging out with some friends at a Waffle House. The only other person there was a very large, scruffy, middle-aged man at the counter. He looked like a biker maybe. He waved us over to him, and we went over there. As a young woman, I assumed he was up to something creepy, but we went over there. He reached into his jacket and pulled out a stack of colored paper napkins, and then proceeded to fold paper roses for me and my friends, including the guys in our group. He wasn't a creep, just an origami enthusiast, and I learned not to judge a book by its cover.
Was working at a store that sells electronics. Younger kid came in and said he needed a laptop for his new business. I said, "What's the business?" He said, "It's just a clothing line, but all the jobs are given to people in recovery." And I said, "That's very admirable," and I couldn't help get teary-eyed. And he said, "Has addiction touched your life?" And I said, "Both my parents are addicts." He said, "Mine too." And then I said, "Do you want a hug?" And then we hugged for like 20 seconds and both cried a little. I sold him a laptop, wished him well, and I felt really warm and fuzzy for the rest of the day. He was a good kid.
About 10 years ago, me and my sister, as young adults, had a little girl on the bus to Disneyland sign something and take a picture with us because we needed a signature from a real princess on our trip to make all of our friends at home jealous. I thought the little one was going to die of excitement, she was so cute. But once we got done with our autograph, she lectured us saying, "You know, you two could be princesses too. You're nice and you are at Disneyland, You just need a crown. We were fresh out, so she conducted our coronations right then and there. Smile. I'll have you all know that I am Princess Gardenia _Guardian, Louisa said so. Also, her parents were so fucking nice, they tried to buy us lunch afterward. It just warms my heart thinking about it. I hope she's still growing up happy and sweet.
On my honeymoon, we went from Venice to Slovenia. At the first train station in Slovenia, it was literally me, my wife, one employee in the ticket booth, and a Finnish couple, the man inebriated to the point where I kept muttering, "Please don't vomit on my honeymoon." We had like a 2-hour wait for our train. So naturally the drunk guy started a conversation. His name was Alex. The only place in America we had ever been to was Santa Barbara. And man, we talked a lot. At one point, we danced. And before we left for our train, he gave me a kiss on the cheek. It was the best interaction I've ever had with a stranger, and I have no doubt in my mind he doesn't remember it.
I used to take a bus from North California every other month to see a girl I was dating at the time. She ended up cheating on me, but I made the trips anyway to try and salvage what I could of the relationship. During those bus rides I felt like an idiot, 6 to 8 hours of riding alone in a bus full of strangers to go see a girl who had slept with another guy in the hopes of her possibly not doing that ever again and making up for her mistakes. A naive long shot if there ever was one. During one of my bus rides I sat next to a girl who had just come to California from Germany. I'm not usually one to strike up conversations, but she kind of noticed how spaced out I was and asked me if I was okay. We started talking the whole way. She told me about her family, her school, her favorite TV shows. I told her mine, and we even pulled out a laptop and watched the pilot episodes of each other's favorite shows. I opened up about my predicament and how stupid I felt. She told me I was handsome and attractive and, from what she can tell from our conversations, a decent person, and it was stupid for my girlfriend to cheat on me, and that I was a fighter because I was still trying to give her a chance. All of this came out towards the end of the bus ride and we parted ways shortly after. I never saw her again, but what she said was the confidence boost I needed to hear and the human interaction I didn't know I wanted.
I was desperately needing a taxi while traveling alone one night on a freezing cold evening in Russia. Maybe minus 25 Celsius. I only knew a few words in Russian. I stood on the corner of a busy road for hours trying to hail a taxi. I had no idea what else to do as I just could not find a hotel or hostel. A man drove up to me and asked where I needed to go. I knew the word train in Russian and how to say I don't speak Russian. He drove off because we just couldn't really understand each other. About 30 minutes later he drove back and handed me his phone. I put it to my ear, and it was his daughter speaking in English telling me that her father would drive me to the train station, which was about 15 miles away. This kind man drove me out of his way to the train station, and if it weren't for him, I have no idea what would have happened to me that night.
For context, in high school I was a semi-competitive runner. When you go to the state meet, in my state, you're given a really nice shirt, perfect athletic wear, fits nice, has the big state track meet emblem. Everyone likes this shirt, and people that qualify for state are a little proud of owning one. Anyway, fast forward to college. I'm having a really bad day for reasons unremembered, and I'm wearing this shirt. I'm walking to class and I spot this very attractive girl walking in the other direction, also wearing the state shirt. I guess I stared for too long, looking at the shirt. Obviously, and she noticed. I usually flick my eyes away in this situation, but didn't. She held my gaze for a split second, then I saw her eyes flick down to my chest briefly, noticing my shirt, then back up to me. She gave me this massive smile, and continued walking. That made my day significantly better.